All right, so the first letter of the HACCP plan is H, and that stands for hazard. Hazard is quite simply something that's dangerous. Whether we talk about food, something that's hazardous could either be a physical contamination, which could be glass or dirt or fingernails or jewelry, or a chemical contamination. So somebody's handling chemicals in the wrong place, and unfortunately, they get dumped into food. Or a biological contamination like a virus or a fungi or any kind of bacteria, microorganisms that can get into your food. So those are the hazards, and you need to identify those hazards. So the second letter is A, and that stands for analysis. Okay, so analysis is a fancy word for study. You're going to look at your entire operation, and you're going to identify the critical control points, the CCPs. So that's all the steps in preparation of food that have to be controlled. And that could be from the time that it's received at your back door, what temperature it comes in, how quickly it goes under refrigeration, during the process of cooking, where are the chemicals, where are they stored before, during, and after, who's handling those chemicals, make sure they're handling them the right way. Is your staff properly equipped? Are they wearing the right things? Do they have jewelry on, which you're not supposed to have on? Are they washing their hands properly? Are they cooking the food to the right temperatures? You need to identify all the critical areas that could cause foodborne illness and control those areas. So the analysis or the study is basically looking at everything that you do from the time it comes in the back door till the time it goes out the kitchen door to the customer, making sure that you're doing everything you can to control those critical areas that could cause trouble. Okay, so establish critical limits for control, measure each critical control point. So this one gives the example of cooking food. You have to cook chicken to a minimum internal temperature of 165. So it's important that you set the critical limits. I'm going to give you an example of a temperature log. This is a temperature log that goes on the refrigerators at school. So right on the log, it says freezers must be below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Refrigerators must be below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. If not, report to chef. All right. One of the key things is that you monitor it, but there has to be standards. There has to be critical control points. If there's not a critical limit, right? If you haven't established a critical limit, then people don't know where that is. If it's not written anywhere, if it's not presented anywhere, if nobody can see it, then does it really fit? And that's the question. Is it really being followed? That's an example because it's right on the temperature log. You have to look at the temperature log and it says exactly what's not right. So I would make a temperature log like I talked about for the chicken, have it on the hotline, and I would have right on the top, all chicken must be 165 internal temperature for 15 seconds. So it's all there in black and white. You establish the critical limits. All right, so back to monitoring. I just showed an example, and I'll show it again, of the temperature log. So here's the temperature log, and you need to monitor. All right, so plain and simple, what should happen is this log goes on the refrigerator. I, in the office, can type in May 2020. Now, we're talking about a school situation, and I learned the hard way that if I don't put Saturday, Sunday on these, or even farther down, I don't put we're closed because we have no school because of Memorial Day, then what'll happen is the person will go in and they tend not to look at the date. This forces them to look at the date. So they would come in and they would say, okay, it's Friday, May 1st. They write in the temperature, they write in the time, then they write in the temperature. And then if it's not right, then they would notify the chef, like it says right in the thing. So we set the guidelines, we set the parameters, and then here's the action. And we're monitoring to make sure that our walk-in, this one is for the walk-in cooler in the cafeteria. So we're checking the temperature to make sure it's as low as it should be. And if it's not, you tell the chef, and the chef will jump to action and fix it. And then on this form, we would write in what we did. Perfect example of this is right before we had the COVID break. The freezer on the cafeteria side went down, but it didn't go down completely. You could tell Chef M has been doing this for a long time, and he could tell that the product inside there wasn't frozen as solid as it should be, and the temperature wasn't quite high enough for the alarms that are on that walk-in freezer to go off. But he could identify that something wasn't quite right. So even though it wasn't, nothing got into the danger zone, he took corrective action. So he took everything out of his freezer, put it on carts, and relocated it into the cafeteria freezer. Then he contacted maintenance. They came down and they fixed it, or they had somebody come in and put a new compressor on. So in this box right here, let's say he discovered that the temperature was higher than zero. He took everything out, but he would write in this thing, removed all product, put it under other freezer, and then had the freezer fixed. We made sure it ran for 24 hours before it was put back in, or the food was put back in. So it was fixed on Friday. We let it run all weekend long. We came back in on Monday. We checked the temperature. If it's down below what it's supposed to be, we can put the food back in. All right. Okay, so back to the video. All right, so just got through talking about that. Establish corrective actions that need to be taken if critical limits are not being met. All right, so if something goes wrong. It just gave you the perfect example. The freezer, the temperature was checked. It was above zero. Chef M could realize that things were not where they were supposed to be. Still, the food was below freezing, which is 32 degrees. He was able to make corrective action and get it fixed. Another good example of that would be, let's say that you have a buffet and you're monitoring the temperatures on the buffet, and you check the temperature of the hot held soup and it should be above 135. The corrective action would be take it back in the kitchen, put it in the pot, bring it back to 165, then you can put it back on the buffet. But that also, just as well as the freezer, needs to be written somewhere. So you would probably have a temperature log. You would document what you tapped the food at on the buffet. If something wasn't up to snuff, you would then take corrective actions to fix it. All right, so you need to establish procedures for verification. Prove that your HACCP system is working. And I'm going to go back to that same temperature log. Actually, here's the temperature log itself, and you can see I put it on the fridge, May 20th. There's the date. Fill in the thing. Now, there's a couple of things we need to look for. This is an example of it being filled out. So it's Friday the 1st. At 9:58 a.m., the temperature was taken at 39 degrees. No corrective action needs to be taken. All right. So me as the food service director, or in this situation, the chef instructor, I'm going to look, okay, so 7 a.m., I'm not seeing it being taken all at the same time. Different colored pens, different, this is a pencil, this is a red pen, this is a different pen than that pen. So obviously it's being done by more than one person. The temperatures are varying. They're not exactly the same. The time is not the same. That's important too. because if you take the temperature at the exact same time, let's say you take it every day when you first walk in the door, you want to take it during production. You want to take it when that freezer door and that refrigerator door is being opened and closed periodically during the day. Because if you take it first thing in the morning, well, no one's opened the door. So of course it's going to be nice and cold in there. You want to take it sometimes in the middle of production to make sure that it's holding the temperature it's supposed to hold. And it stands to reason that the temperature would rise a little bit if you're opening and closing the door. So if you do it every day, the first thing in the morning, you're not giving yourself an accurate look at your refrigeration. That's number one. All right. And as a manager, I'm looking for this. I'm looking to see, did they miss a day? Saturdays and Sundays we aren't there, but did they miss a day? Or I'm also looking for this. This is a huge red flag for me. If it's May 11th, which today is May 11th, and I walk in there and I see 9 a.m., 9 a.m., 9 a.m., 40, 40, 40, 40, 40, 40, what it tells me is that that person who did that is working the entire week. In the regular world, you're going to have probably one person that's going to wash, or it's going to take these temperatures every day. You make it somebody's responsibility. So if it's the pantry person, you're going to take their temperatures of the refrigerators in your area. If it's that pantry person and they're taking that temperature and they know they have to do it, a lot of times employees will say, I don't want to do this every day, and just go ahead and fill it in. Well, the problem happens when, as the person who is making sure my system is working, I look at it and say, well, this doesn't fit because you're not monitoring on a daily basis like I need you to do. And based on this, I doubt you looked at a thermometer at all. You just wrote down the temperature it's supposed to be. And if I'm the health department and I walk in and it's Monday the 11th and this is already filled in through the 15th, that's a huge red flag. Obviously, your HACCP system isn't working. You're not monitoring it correctly. All right. And then we'll go back to the video. All right, so establish documentation and records for your HACCP system. So the actual paper itself that I would have that would be on, so you would have one of these for the walk-in cooler, for the cafeteria side, walk-in cooler, walk-in freezer, the 6-door fridge where Miss Lynn puts all of the salad stuff and we put the fruit that we cup up, the 3-door fridge that's over on the end of the line. On Chef M's side, you would have the dairy fridge, the condiment fridge, the sandwich refrigerators. Every unit would have their own paper. And then every day you would take the temperature and you would keep the temperatures. And then at the end of the month, I used to put them all together with one of these little clips like this and put them all together with a clip and I put them in a file. If the health department walks in and wants to see my records for my refrigerators, I have 90 days worth of documentation. I would hold them for 3 months that my refrigerators were up to speed and working the proper way. All right, that's a good example of a HACCP program. All right, so if there's changes now, I guess if you watch the other video that we had, this was the brainchild of NASA and of Pillsbury. They didn't want to send anything up to outer space that was any microorganisms, put them on a space capsule and send them up to outer space. So they came up with this system, and the main reason they did that was to minimize any microorganisms or any hazards going up. It was adopted by the rest of the industry, but the thing that on that last slide that it talks about is if something has changed, you need to review your HACCP plan. You need to make sure that it's up to speed and up to date. It doesn't do anybody any good to have policies and procedures in a book in the office that nobody sees. It doesn't do anybody any good to put up policies and procedures and then everything gets changed and you don't update the policies and procedures. All right, so that is the principles of the HACCP plan. Thank you.